Hi, this is Scott Blackley, CFO of Oscar Health, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 1079.
That if we have an opportunity to course correct 12 times or 52 times, that the more frequent assessment is going to create more action within our executive team and our board. And so it's been a game changer in our business. Putting the right structure in place so that we could do it in 15 minutes was key. But now each week we have a view of our monthly P&L projections and our margin projections and bookings and pipeline volumes, sales rep performance, all the key deals that are in front of us. Any new opportunities that have been created in the past week, and any movements in our net revenue retention. And so, when we see metrics start to trend in the wrong direction, we're much quicker to take action. And when we see metrics trending above plan, we can feed that fire really fast. And so, we don't really have surprises anymore. The data's flashed to our board and executive team every week. And what I found and what's been incredibly helpful is no surprises is a key tenet to a successful board relationship.
Hi, it's Jack. Good to have you with us. What if your financial reports were slowing you down? When 2X secured private equity backing in March 2023, CFO Brandon Sullivan moved fast, ramping up hiring to meet expected demand. But growth didn't follow, and churn crept up. Waiting for month-end reports, Sullivan tells us, wasn't an option. He overhauled financial reporting, moving to weekly insights to catch snags faster, keep investors informed, and get growth back on track. You'll hear how he did it and more on today's episode. Our conversation with CFO Brandon Sullivan begins after this. Hello, we're speaking with Brandon Sullivan, CFO of 2X. Brandon, welcome.
Pleasure to be here with you, Jack.
Yeah, so Brandon, as always, take us back in time and try to identify those experiences you feel prepared you to advance into finance leadership to become a CFO. What would those be?
Yeah, for sure. For me personally, just landing in FP&A was probably the foundational seed that prepared me for a CFO role. When I was in school, I don't think universities did a great job of educating us on what all the career paths were coming out of school. I didn't really even know what FP&A was, and I was graduating with a finance degree. So I went to school in North Jersey, and everything was really geared towards banking and investment banking and wealth management, and that was all fine and well, unless, like me, you were graduating in spring of 2008 during the global financial crisis. And so, sort of gearing towards investment banking wasn't a great spot to be in. I'll never forget, I had one interview in Manhattan the morning that Bear Stearns collapsed. And I'm a senior with no job prospects. And so I'm taking every interview I can find. And I walk into the office and the secretary asked me my name, says, "What are you here for?" And I said, I got an interview. And she said, "Son, what are you doing here? Half the people behind this door aren't going to be here by lunch. Like, did you read the news?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm a graduating senior. Like, I'm trying to find a job. I'm going to show up." And so it was an interesting time to try to find a job. But luckily, I was able to land a finance specialist role at a company called GSI Commerce, which was ultimately acquired by eBay. And I found that through a Craigslist ad, which is laughable to think about today. But again, I didn't even have a good idea of what that job entailed, a finance specialist. I was just really happy to land a job. But I quickly fell in love with FP&A and finding answers through analysis and modeling. My role was in the e-commerce agency side of the business. And that was in its infancy, both as a company and an industry, like e-commerce and, marketing for e-commerce. The thought of buying jeans online was crazy, and buying stuff off of Facebook was insane. But it was this emerging industry, and the executives there and the management team had this desire for dashboards and customer level P&Ls and workforce planning models, but we didn't have tools for any of that. And so it was kind of baptism by fire to just kind of figure all this out, and it instilled first principles thinking in me. I learned that e-commerce sales, which is what everybody was concerned about, was that was the output. That wasn't the thing that actually drove business success. It was sort of that ending metric. And so I learned to backtrack through the customer journey to identify all the real key levers of what drove the success. And so, it started with site visits and the source of those site visits, whether it was organic search or paid search or email campaigns, affiliate links, retargeted ads, and from there, the customer navigates through all these different experiences and scrolls product pages and clicks on different products and maybe bounces out at some point during the journey. Maybe they add to the cart, it converts, and maybe it doesn't. And so, you could still see and track all these individual elements and isolate them in the data. And, once you put that all back together, you could kind of create the story of what that ending number, actually meant. And being able to deliver that story, through analysis of all these first principles, individual pieces of data, it was so powerful to learn that. And it's something that I still carry with me as a CFO today as I present to our executive team here and our board and our investors.
Yeah. And are you already, and I know you go on to get an MBA, I think, after your eBay years, and are you already thinking that way? I'll go back for an MBA.
I felt that in order to get a CFO job someday, you needed 3 letters behind your name, and it either had to be a CPA or an MBA. I think there's sort of a glass ceiling that exists in a lot of cases, and I do listen to your podcast often, so I know there's non-traditional ways to get into that CFO role. But I think traditionally, coming up through the finance org, you need one of those designations. And so for me, a CPA was off the table. You need to decide that pretty early. And I didn't go that route through college, and so I knew I needed an MBA, and I wanted to find that sweet spot of having years of experience so that the MBA actually meant something and I could provide value through the courses and interactions. But I also didn't want to wait too late. I was amazed about the people that would show up to class and, they had families and they had kids at home, and it's a grueling, to do your part-time MBA is a grueling process. And so,
is it largely nights for you? I mean, you were working during the day, going at night. Okay. I know it's a common scenario, but it's got to be a grind. It just has to.
It is. Yeah. And that's kind of why I chose that point in my career. I was 5-6 years into my career. I didn't have a family yet. I wasn't married. And so it felt like the right time to execute that. I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who, are able to juggle that with a family or, different priorities.
Yep. So post eBay, what are you looking for? What type of role?
Yeah, so at that point, I'd fallen in love with FP&A. And so I knew that I sort of wanted to stay that path and ultimately, get into that director of FP&A role and get up into the CFO path through there. And so my next job, I was at a company called Quintic. It was a supply chain optimization software company. And there I learned a couple of things. One was just to raise my hand and say yes. They hired me to be the FP&A business partner for the go-to-market function. I never used Salesforce before. I didn't know how to navigate it, but it's like, I'm going to figure it out. And so kind of went back to that first principles thinking and learned how to a B2B funnel worked. I kind of knew like the e-commerce funnel, but learned how to a B2B funnel worked and built a dashboard that assessed our volume of leads, our velocity of opportunities, the quality of our opportunities. Build a dashboard to help educate the business on how everything's moving through the funnel, where the bottlenecks are in the funnel, and create greater visibility to our sales team. I kind of got in there as a senior financial analyst and worked my way up to director of FP&A by offering greater business partnerships. So I built a business level review process. We had P&L owners in that business that were really operators in the business, but weren't necessarily P&L savvy. They hadn't been finance trained or taken a lot of finance classes. They were individual contributors that sort of rose up through the ranks. And so part of my responsibility there was to educate them on a monthly basis on their P&Ls and all the levers that they have at their disposal, and then how those individual levers actually influence the P&L output that ultimately they got compensated on. And so really starting to hone that business partnership element of the job was key there. It also broadened my horizon on international business. And so Quintic had, I think, like 13 different international locations, Europe, Asia, the Americas. And it really opened my eyes to the difference in cultures, attitudes towards work internationally, different methodologies on taxation. Like I learned what VAT was. I had no idea what VAT was before, working at an international company. I learned about FX risks and time zone difficulties and opportunities with time zone. And so, being able to start to get that international experience served me well, especially as I got to 2X, which I know we'll talk about our business, but we are very international as well.
Well, you are unquestionably at that point a finance executive, yes? Because in the go-to-market model for a lot of these companies as they mature, there are opportunities to jump over into other parts of the organization or learn, adopt a new career track. But you're very focused. Am I right? And again, you already mentioned those three letters you thought would help you become a CFO someday. So you were thinking, a CFO track from fairly early on.
Yeah, I'd always, sort of been ambitious in school and in my career. And so, I always wanted to get to that top spot. And so, the go-to-market FP&A function was certainly helpful in that. But yeah, as I got to the director of FP&A role, I certainly broadened my horizons and started to understand the workforce economics, more the supply chain of services businesses. It just got a broader experience in the finance realm. I took that with me as I went to a regional bank called Univest in our area, and that totally shifted my lens because in FP&A you're so P&L focused.
Yeah.
Especially in some PE-backed businesses like I had been in, where adjusted EBITDA is the number that you really care about, and you're so P&L focused, and how are you driving growth within the P&L? I never focused on a balance sheet probably for the first 10 years of my career, and so again, wanting to be in that CFO role, I knew I had to be more well balanced in the three financial statement models, and going to a regional bank really helped me hone that because banking's all balance sheet focused. The P&L all drives off of the balance sheet, which is how much interest are you generating off of your assets versus how much interest are you paying out on all of your liabilities, and that that asset liability spread is really how the P&L runs. And so having a few years where I was totally focused on balance sheet growth rather than looking at the P&L, finally gave me that well-rounded experience that I needed before I stepped into my first CFO role.
And what about, your first experiences? I would imagine they came as you became a senior FP&A professional, but where you're finding yourself, informing the board or presenting before, C-suite management. When does that happen?
Yeah. Company called OCM. It was a private equity backed company. That was my first real exposure to board meetings.
Yeah.
The CFOs that I had at that company had risen into the seat through the CPA path. And so they were great technical accountants, and our books were super clean, but they didn't have that that analytic mindset or the storytelling ability that you kind of gain through the FP&A world. And so our PE board at OCM really had an appetite for having an FP&A voice in the room during board meetings and during any conversations they were having with the executive team. And so that got me exposure towards building the board decks and delivering engaging presentations and facing the firing squad after you give those presentations and making sure that you're totally buttoned up on all your answers. It also gave me an appreciation on filling your weaknesses with a number two. Like I said, the CFOs there were CPAs, and so they really relied on me as the FP&A sort of side of their brain. And I've certainly utilized that as I move forward in my career, being the FP&A side of the world and making sure that I've got a strong controllership function under me, because that's not really my sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's a nice overview for us. Before we hear about 2X, can you tell us, was it your network or a recruiter who ultimately brings you through the door?
Yeah, so it was my network. And so a CFO that I had worked for at Quintic ended up on the board of 2X through his travels and helped actually create the company. And the company has always been in this hypergrowth mode. And it got to a point where there was no finance function that really existed. The CEO's wife did the bookkeeping, and he found out pretty quickly that there's nothing less romantic at the dinner table than talking about a growing DSO metric. And it got to the point where he told Rich, who was the CFO that I'd worked for that was on board, like, listen, I need finance help. Should I get like a controller or something like that? And Rich, I think, aptly sort of recommended, like, Tom, you're growing 80% per year. Like, you probably need a controller now, but in 6 months to a year, you're going to need a CFO. And so just make that investment ahead of the curve and get a CFO in place so that, by the time that you actually need one, that person's on the ground and running. And by the way, I got your guy. And so, he set us up. We met once in person, during COVID, and hit it off immediately, and been together ever since.
Well, let's find out about 2X then. Tell us about this company. What's it about? What are its offerings?
Yeah, so 2X innovates on the traditional marketing organizational model. We reimagine how enterprises structure and deploy their marketing operations. So I mentioned our founder and CEO earlier. He started the company because he was a CMO himself, and he realized that there was this critical inefficiency in how companies typically build their marketing functions. CMOs kind of build these large internal teams that are costly and inflexible, and they often struggle to keep pace with evolving technical requirements. And so he set out to change that model. And so the solution that we offer, we call it marketing as a service. We deliver enterprise grade B2B marketing execution work through a highly skilled offshore workforce. That workforce is in Malaysia and the Philippines. And so think of like the managed services model that's prevalent in IT or HR, kind of the BPO cognizant type of model, but geared towards B2B marketing. And so what we offer to marketers and really their finance business partners is value creation in three areas. The first is obviously cost efficiency. So we deliver about 50% cost savings per hour of work while still maintaining or even improving the quality of the output through our rigorously certified talent pool. And so for a marketing department, that either translates to significant bottom line impact or the ability to shift dollars in the program spend or technology without actually sacrificing the output that exists. The second thing that we offer is operational flexibility. And so unlike traditional fixed internal headcount, our model allows companies to scale resources up or down based on business needs. You effectively convert fixed FTE cost into a variable subscription cost. And so that gives CFOs and CMOs greater control over their marketing spend and improved ability to manage margins throughout up and down business cycles. It also creates flexibility as needs change, and whether that's volume of work or shifting priorities or technology changes. Having a subscription model for the execution layer of your marketing work, creates a lot more flexibility than sort of that that inflexible headcount. The third thing that we offer is risk mitigation. So hiring is tough. Like we've all felt that across our careers when we've had to make hires. We reduce the operational risk for marketers that's associated with that. So we do all the hiring, we do all the training, we maintain all the specialized marketing talent. So our team's already certified across all the modern B2B tech stack. We have specialists in any technology that a marketer or CMO might put into their organization. And so we cut down like the time to value creation for marketers as they're looking to fill spots. And we reduce technology utilization risks for all these big investments that they're making. And so that's kind of the value that we offer. The market's really validated our model as evidenced by our growth. I think we've been about 80% compound annual growth rate during my time here. We solve a problem that CMOs are constantly facing, which I think is created by your particular audience, myself included. We hear every day from our CMO customers that like, hey, we just finished our budgeting cycle, and my CFO told me we need to increase revenue by 20% and also cut our budget by 20%. It's just sort of this evergreen scenario that our CMOs are facing, and the physics on that don't work. There aren't many viable solutions to execute that, and so through our model, we found that CMOs are able to optimize that marketing spend and expand capabilities so that they can solve this do more with less environment that we're in, sort of post growth at all costs, COVID, that grow like crazy. And so, that's the solution that we offer.
Can you give us a sense, how big an organization is 2X today?
Yeah, so we've got about 1,100 employees, with about 1,000 of those being delivery resources that are spread across Malaysia, Philippines, and then a little bit here in the U.S.
The way the finance world might look at this is, I get it. CMO fractional, like CFO fractional. Clarify.
Yeah. So think a couple levels down on that, Jack. So not necessarily the strategy layer. We think that the strategy layer should stay in-house. And so, in the marketing world, it's identifying your ideal customer profile, campaign strategy, anything in the strategic world. We think that should stay in-house. Very much like in the in the finance world, we think CFOs should generally be in-house for enterprise organizations, and the FP&A layer, the strategic layer. That's the stuff that only you can do should be in-house. The stuff that you don't need to be best in the world in, that's the stuff that should be offshored and executed. And that's where AP and AR and payroll has found a place for offshore execution in finance. That's the kind of stuff that we offshore in the marketing world. And so our model is generally to deploy teams of people into enterprises. And so a customer of ours might buy 10 FTEs from us, and that spans the marketing execution roles of marketing operations and writing, web design, video creation, data analyst. So all like the day-to-day care and feeding of the marketing organization that, you don't necessarily need to be best in the world in. You should offshore that and get savings for that, and then actually take your budget savings and invest that in the core stuff that only you can do.
Would this be the role that 2X might play? Help us get our go-to-market function to the next level. Help us, mend what's broken here.
Yeah, we can. We do have a consulting arm that comes in and helps, assess the go-to-market function and, develop campaign strategy. It's not the core of our business. It's probably like 5% of our business is developing that strategy. We work well with companies that have marketing leadership in place that know what they want to do. They just might not have, the budget that they need or all the resources that they need to actually execute on that. We call it the marketing resource paradox, where they need to create growth to actually justify more budget, but they need more budget to justify growth. And so it's sort of this never-ending cycle that exists. And so we can certainly help fix the go-to-market function, but where we really shine is when you have that leadership and you know what you want to do, being able to optimize your budget and get you the most value for your marketing dollar.
Gotcha. Can you share with us how you've organized finance within this company, which is unique in a number of aspects? Can you tell us if you made, certain hires, prioritize certain hires over others?
Yeah. So I mentioned when I started, the business wasn't quite ready for a CFO yet, but we were growing so fast that we sort of invested ahead of that curve. And so, not having been a CFO yet myself, this is my first CFO role. It was a great spot to jump into because I could grow into the role a bit, but there was virtually no finance when I started, and so I wore all the hats. I was I kind of considered myself an air traffic controller. I utilized third parties for our bookkeeping and our tax and our legal and our payroll, and just kind of coordinated, made sure everything was getting done while doing the FP&A strategy work myself, because that was my sweet spot and what I love to do. Once we got PE backing, I utilized that. Hey, I need a good number two in the thing that I'm weakest in. Use that mentality, and so I hired an A+ controller, and that was a major load bearing beam for me to put in place. Being FP&A born and bred, I wasn't a gap technician, and so getting someone to get buttoned up on the controllership function, making sure that we had proper reconciliations and that everything was being recorded and reported and proper US GAAP in the proper US GAAP way was a big leg up for us. From there, we put regional accounting in-house in our international locations to handle all the day-to-day transactional work and start to get that off of the more senior level finance folks, and also to start creating business partnership within the local country leadership. And so still in the accounting function, really starting to build that out and putting some local boots on the ground. And that's mostly the structure that we operate in with today. So finance leadership in the US, with myself still doing a lot of the FP&A work, and then regional accounting sources internationally, and then third-party support in non-core functions like tax, legal, all that kind of stuff.
As a CFO, how do you see AI fitting into the company's long-term strategy today?
Yeah, so I'm kind of thinking about it in two different ways. What our delivery function offers, and then what we're thinking about in finance. In our delivery function, our delivery teams are AI enabled today. And so 65% of our revenue is touched by AI in some way. We've created a center of excellence, an AI center of excellence, so that our teams are all equipped and trained in the latest tools and platforms. This is a prime example of why we're so passionate about outsourcing the execution work of the marketing function, because the rate at which AI is moving is it's impossible for marketing generalists to keep up with, like juggling all the other responsibilities they might have, and then trying to figure out what is OpenAI putting out in their latest model, and what is DeepSeek, and Perplexity just offered this deep research, and there's such a rate of speed that this thing is evolving that we think you should outsource this to a company like ours that this has individuals that are focused on this every day. And so our internal resources, like I said, they're dedicated to being leading edge on all the different models, as well as all the layer of tools that are sort of being built on these models. And then all of our, like I said, about 65% of our delivery resources are touching AI in some way, and whether that's designers that are using generative AI for efficiency and effect. We found that our designers can create creative about 33% faster than just using stock imagery. And the click-through rates that we get on those are about 63% higher using AI visuals than just standard stock imagery. Our writers are able to produce double the content volume in about 33% less time. And our marketing ops folks are using account-based marketing tools that are leveraging AI to help our clients understand intent data for their ideal customer profiles. So, who's out there in the market, who's searching, terms that I'm interested in, what else are they searching for, and using that to create, customer profiles that they can then offload to their sales team to follow up on. And so, in delivery, we use it every day to produce more and better outputs for our clients.
Just that statistic you shared about your writers are producing double the content at 33% of the time. It would appear that you are measuring, you are trying to understand how employees are leveraging language models. Can you share with us? I mean, were you proactive here? Were you, was there company-wide discussions around, how can we leverage this? And who better than the employee themselves to understand, okay, here's where I can accelerate what I do. How did that happen?
Yeah, so our customers almost demanded it of us. Like, all these tools are coming into the market, and there's probably not a board conversation that's happening, across the country that doesn't have some element of, hey, how are we using AI? And all of the executives are being challenged on how are we using AI? And so our CMO community is coming to us and looking for our point of view on, how are my resources using AI, and where are you guys seeing AI going? And so it was almost forced upon us to begin thinking in that way. And once we started rolling it out and seeing the benefits, we were able to deliver that value to our customers. So they're still getting a writer from us, but now it's an AI-enabled writer that's coming with the tools, that's coming, fully trained on how to use this stuff. And so, we're kind of looking at it at the human plus AI piece is where our customers are getting the most value and where we're really building around.
Yeah. And are you, just in terms of your discussions with hiring in different departments, are you part of those discussions now where, let's just say, a certain department is looking to make several senior hires and you're not convinced they're leveraging AI as well, as they can be. I'm not sure that's a scenario, but I'm just trying to say, isn't that what we see happening here? Pushback on company departments saying, is your team really using this? Are they really investigating new ways to leverage it? Do you have to make these hires this quarter? Can we wait and see how your team begins leveraging AI more effectively? Is that a realistic discussion or not really?
It's a realistic discussion, but the way that we've chosen to look at it is, especially being in hypergrowth mode, is maybe not necessarily like, do we need to pull back on hiring, but how much more output can we get from our people by leveraging AI? And so, it's not necessarily taking the 160 hours and making it 80 hours. It's taking that 160 hours and getting double or triple the output of it in that, and being able to grow as a result of that.
Right. Want to just touch on metrics quickly with you. So what are the metrics what are top of mind metrics for you? And again, this is the numbers you look at before your first cup of coffee. What are we talking about?
My North Star metric is monthly MRR growth. So our recurring revenue growth. Our model mainly runs on MRR, and so we deploy teams of people and get a subscription charge for that on a monthly basis. And so that's what I'm looking at every day. I know off the top of my head that 3.4% monthly growth compounds to 50% on the year, and so that's sort of like the minimum number that we're looking for is 50% growth year on year. And so every month I'm looking towards how are we tracking towards hitting that 3.4% monthly growth. And then there's a bunch of different layers that come underneath that. And so when you think about monthly recurring revenue growth, there's new logos that come into the equation. There's expanding existing customers. There's existing customer churn, and the net of the expansion of the churn being your net revenue retention. And so, there's different layers and different ways that you can skin the cat, depending on seasonality or volume of the business. That sometimes some of those are both bigger in each direction, and sometimes they're a little lighter. But overall, that North Star metric tells me whether we're heading on the way to hitting our goals for the year or not.
So over that time, was there one particular metric that you realized the organization needed to, understand or be educated on differently, that it wasn't getting the attention it needed? And can you share with us, is there one that comes to mind, and how did you go about making certain people understood?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, monthly recurring revenue is certainly a piece of that. We just, before I got here, they really just looked at top line revenue number and didn't actually break out, the recurring piece of it, project piece of it. We do some media spend that's passed through, and so it was all just one kind of lump number. And so,
Yep.
actually breaking those pieces apart and educating the business on, hey, project-based business is really tough, right? Like you almost start at zero every year, and you've got to build that back up versus this recurring model that we've got. The compounding effect on that is what allows us to be hypergrowth. So the MRR sort of the metric, and then the overall concept and strategy behind it is certainly one. The other piece that I've been focused on a lot is workforce supply and demand management. And so we've got over 1,000 people in delivery, and you have to imagine the incredible calculus that goes into skill sets in different marketing technologies, and customers that are churning and new customers that are coming on, and employee turnover and new hires, and sort of mixing and matching that to make sure that we're not getting bloated and we're optimizing our margins. That's something that's been top of mind. We haven't solved it. One of our PE founders, Frank D'Souza, he was the CEO of Cognizant. He said in his time he doesn't know that he ever solved it. At Cognizant, which is one of the most mature BPOs in the world. And so I don't know that we'll ever get to perfect harmony, but it's something that I'm always seeking to better measure and then create more visibility around.
Brandon, we'd like to jump to our finance strategic moment question. We're really looking for just a good story that relates how finance plays a strategic role. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, the one that stands out to me in my career is I mentioned a couple of times we're PE backed. We did that in March of 2023, and so coming out of that PE investment process was interesting. We had a very intense process. There's 6 months of content preparation and introduction calls and management meetings and due diligence and negotiations. And as we're coming down the stretch with our selected PE firm, we're starting to look to the future and thinking like, man, there's going to be a press release that goes out that says like, we're PE back now. And our PE firm has this treasure chest of relationships that they're going to open up for us. And we need to be ready to capitalize on that. And so we amped up our recruiting and our hiring engines to make sure we had enough supply to fulfill all the demand that we expected. Our biggest fear was telling our new PE partners, like, thanks for the introduction, but like, we don't have enough people to service them. Sorry. That was not a great way that we thought, to start our relationship. What happened in reality was we were so entrenched in that investment process for 6 months that the executive team collectively took their eye off the business, myself included. Our pipeline had not been properly tended to. Our churn was creeping up. We had some holes that we hadn't paid attention to. And the benefits that we expected to receive from our new partnership, they weren't instantaneous. Like they needed to be planted and grow. And so, what effectively happened was we ramped up all of our supply, and then our revenue stalled out, coming out of that process, which created an issue of our gross margin percentage just leaking month after month, until we got a proper lashing from our our new PE board, which it was a tough conversation, but one that was needed. And the realization that I had coming out of that was monthly reporting was too infrequent for our dynamic business. If you think about the seed of a problem sprouting, if you're waiting until a month-end close and then maybe reporting happening a couple of weeks later, you're lucky if you spot your problem in that first set of reporting, right? And so maybe you don't spot it, and in reality, it doesn't get attention in that first review. Now you're another 4 to 6 weeks out before you're looking at it again. And so we were in a position where we were acting on problems that started 8 to 10 weeks before, and are going to take some time to solve after that. And so 8 to 10 weeks is 20% of the year gone by. And by the time you're solving it, maybe it's 25 or 50% of the year gone by before you're solving problems. And so what that inspired me to do was put in a weekly reporting cadence to our board and our leadership team, with both lagging and leading metrics, with the thought that if we have an opportunity to course correct 12 times or 52 times, the more frequent assessment is going to create more action within our executive team and our board. And so it's been a game changer in our business. It took some time to get the data structured properly and the tools in place so that it's a 15-minute report. It's not taking an entire day to do weekly reporting, because I didn't want to put that on myself and my team that, hey, an entire day is dedicated to just building reports. Like, that's not the best use of our time. And so putting the right structure in place so that we could do it in 15 minutes was key. But now each week we have a view of our monthly P&L projections and our margin projections and bookings and pipeline volumes, sales rep performance, all the key skills that are in front of us. Any new opportunities that have been created in the past week, and any movements in our net revenue retention. And so, when we see metrics start to trend in the wrong direction, we're much quicker to take action. And when we see metrics trending above plan, we can feed that fire really fast. And so, we don't really have surprises anymore. The data splashed to our board and executive team every week. And what I found and what's been incredibly helpful is no surprises is a key tenet to a board relationship.
Hey, the first time, again, go back 4 years, you stepped into this role that first 30 days. Again, there must have been something, surprised you about the role. If you could go back in time and just give yourself a piece of advice that first 60 days, what would it have been?
Yeah, for me, it would have been, you make the call now. Trust your judgment. I've spent years creating analyses for others to make decisions. And now, I get in this role and I'm the decision maker. And so, I wish someone would have just, sort of kicked me in the butt immediately. It ended up coming a little later down the road. I'd always, in my past 3 roles before being a CFO, 2X, I was always the number 2 to the CFO. And so I was kind of used to, do the research, dig through the data, create the beautiful presentation, and then hand it off to the person that, actually has to do something with it. And I struggled to make that switch a little bit. I started here at 2X, and I remember, I started working through our bank portal, and I'd never seen a business bank account before. But it seemed like the provider that we had, it just wasn't working. Like, it was difficult to send wires and make payments, and they were regionally based, but we were international. And so the ability to make international payments was super onerous. And I just thought it was counterproductive. And so I thought there had to be a better way. And I kind of went down my director of FP&A route. Like, I opened a search for a new bank and found intros to all the key personnel and worked through all the diligence processes and got proposals and leveraged and negotiated them against each other. And then ultimately I showed up at my CEO's desk and delivered him those set of options, the recommendations. And he kind of looked at me like, okay. I was like, so what do you want to do? And he's like, Brandon, you're the CFO. Like, you own the banking relationship. Like, go get us the best option and make it happen. And so it was kind of kicking the butt I needed to switch into that gear. And my attitude in the role has changed ever since. But it was a little tough for me to realize, like, you're the guy now. Like, you got to make the call. And so that's something I wish I would have understood a little quicker.
Just curious about yourself. That's an interesting insight you shared, that you were frequently in the last few senior roles you had, you were the number 2 to the CFO. You had that access. You were constantly collaborating or having conversations with the CFO, the top finance leader. Would you have missed that if you were in a large enterprise outfit? Not for you. Did you find a weight class of company that, was better for you?
Yeah, I love the smaller company, like the lower middle market PE, just because I could see the impact of the decisions that I was helping drive on a day-to-day basis. I had a quick cup of coffee at a big enterprise company, and we got acquired by eBay when I was at GSI Commerce. And I was in a position at one point where my entire FP&A team was responsible for the depreciation line item on the P&L. And like, it was so demoralizing to me to, like, there was nothing that I could do to actually impact the business's success. Like, it was, make sure that I was the debits and credits were happening properly, and that the amortization schedules were happening properly. But there was nothing that I could point to and say, like, hey, I made a difference today. Like, clock in at 9, clock out at 5, show up the next day, rinse and repeat. So I found that I loved the lower middle market PE backed world, and just being able to see the impact that I'm making on a day-to-day basis.
Great. Thank you for that. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side, Brandon. You've been there 4 years, but there must be something your colleagues don't know about you, something from your past, an interest, a pursuit of yours, anything you can share?
Sure. Some of my colleagues, do know and certainly give me heck about it. But I enjoyed being adversarial as a kid. Like, I'd like being the dissenter among my friends, and because I enjoyed like the competitive environment that fostered. And so, um, being born and raised in the Philadelphia area, there's no bigger opposing point of view than being a Dallas Cowboys fan. And so that's the stand that I took when I was a kid, and I never jumped across the fence. And it's a particularly painful decision that I'm making now, given the recent Super Bowl and the
Yeah.
dynamics of my team seemingly going in the opposite direction. But that's for a different podcast. But I do think that it helped prepare me for the finance roles I've had, particularly my current role, being the CFO of a marketing organization. Finance and marketing, those folks don't typically see eye to eye. You got the left brain, right brain thing. Finance folks, I think, often struggle with, marketers and the investments they want to make, because there's not always a direct ROI that can be connected to invested dollars, especially in B2B marketing. I think marketing folks, they often struggle with finance because we're always attacking their budgets and stifling the momentum of their programs. And so I often think that finance and marketing are cats and dogs in a lot of organizations. And I mentioned we hear that from our CMO clients a lot. And so being the CFO of an organization of 1,000+ marketers, does kind of feel like being that Cowboys fan in Philadelphia a lot of times.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for that. What about a book? You got a book recommendation for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little non-conventional on this, and I'm not intending to be a sports guy on this, but it's another thing that's a little bit sports related. So I mentioned I've lived in the Philly area all my life, and I've been a big 76ers fan since the Allen Iverson days. In 2013, the Sixers hired a general manager. His name was Sam Hinkie, and he was a non-conventional hire. He was a Stanford MBA and a Bain Capital alum. He didn't come up through the basketball ranks, and his tenure here was super controversial. He had this thesis that you either needed to be a championship contender or one of the worst teams in the league, because being the worst team in the league provided an opportunity for a top draft pick.
Nope.
Top draft picks got you superstars, and superstars made you a championship contender. And he called that the process, or I don't know if he called it, but it was eventually named the process.
Yeah.
It didn't work out, for him, and he eventually got pushed out, and he resigned in 2016. And in doing so, he wrote a 13-page resignation letter that he sent to the board of the 76ers that ultimately got leaked. It's easily found through a Google search. It was on ESPN. And in that letter, he detailed his management philosophy and his rationale behind the strategies that he employed. And I think it's both fascinating and very applicable to executives, even though it's kind of focused on basketball and the 76ers. I highly recommend reading it, and I pop it open a few times a year. There's a few key tenets that he discusses, which I think are so important. He talks about long-term planning and patience. I think we struggle with this as CFOs a lot, especially as we have short-term results that aren't favorable. He talks a lot about intellectual humility and continuous learning. You should take the approach that you're wrong. Your goal is to be less wrong. And that I don't know is an acceptable thing to say, and then an empowering thing to say, particularly in a CFO seat. You have to be innovative and have a willingness to fail. He talks about my favorite one that he talks about probably is having a contrarian mindset for disruption. And so there's a thesis that I love in that section that the greatest gains that you make in business are when you're both non-consensus and right. So if you're consensus and right, you're in a red ocean. If you're non-consensus and wrong, you've just failed. But when you get to be non-consensus and right, that's where real market share happens. I think it's something that we've unlocked here at 2X. And the final thing he talks about that I think is super important for first-time CFOs is having a tolerance for uncertainty. Predicting the future is hard, and then if you were able to predict the future, you'd probably be doing something to being a CFO. Making decisions with an incomplete set of facts is uncomfortable, and gaining comfort in decisions that you make that those decisions is going to have a range of outcomes. Any decision that we make is not going to have a binary like it worked or it didn't work. And some of the decisions you make are going to be unfavorable. Having comfort with that makes the job a lot less stressful. So he has all these key tenets that he talks through with quotes from brilliant people, and then ultimately goes into his rationale in the process and all that kind of stuff. But just being able to see the decision-making process from a Stanford MBA that worked for Bain Capital, super brilliant. It's really interesting, and there's hundreds of great finance books that are out there that I know a lot have been recommended on this podcast. But I'd encourage this as a maybe non-conventional read for everybody to take 20 minutes as an easy read through.
Yeah, great one for us. Thank you. We are up to our final question, where we ask you to look forward finally, and we're wondering about the next 12 months as far as your CFO priorities. What would those be over the next 12 months?
Yeah, we've grown at an incredible pace in my 4 years here. I think I mentioned I was employee number 130 when we started, and we're about 1,100 now. And so we expect to continue that rate of growth organically, but we also intend to be active in the M&A market. And so as a finance leader, my focus in the next 12 months is building a finance function that scales, allowing us, A, to increase the organic activity volume, but also plug in acquired companies seamlessly. And so I'm actually eating our own dog food a little bit to accomplish this. And so we're currently in the middle of an initiative to build a finance shared services center in our Manila location. And really the intent of that function is to be the execution arm of the controllership team. And so we want to run all transactional volume around order to cash and procure to pay and record to report for all of our global entities through that shared services center, and then have playbooks so that new acquisitions can be folded in quickly for seamless integration. And so having that operation in place will free up our senior resources to be doing more M&A and strategic work and business partnerships and just focusing on bigger initiatives rather than the day-to-day operations. And so getting that shared services center built and operational over the next 12 months is my key focus.
Brandon Sullivan, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack.